Welcome, everyone. I'm Dana Peever, decision expert, author, speaker, and podcast host. You're listening to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. More women than ever are faced with challenging decisions on a regular basis. I am so privileged to sit down with them to discuss exactly what they've gone through and how they've come out the other side, realizing their wildest dreams. I'm sure you'll be able to relate. And don't forget to stay to the end to take advantage of my latest free gift. Let's get started. Welcome to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. I'm Dana Peever, decision expert. And as always, we're here talking about decisions that have been made in our lives that were courageous or impactful or changed the course of our life, or even one that we wish we could go back on. Today, I have Diane Gilman as my guest. Diane is a fashion rule breaker with millions of loyal fans, the charismatic, pearl-haired queen of jeans. At 77 years young, she is embracing aging instead of fighting it. Her latest book, Too Young to Be Old, is another compelling take on conquering life's challenges and harnessing one's own power to live a third act filled with dream catching and fulfillment. Diane, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, this is so exciting. I love it. And I think maybe a lot of your listeners would know me from the shopping channel where I sold my jean, my famous middle-aged jean, DG2, on the shopping channel right outside of Toronto. So hello, fans.
Hello, I'm sure they'll recognize you for sure. Thank you for that. Before we get started, I want to remind listeners that I ask all my guests at the end of the podcast what their favorite app is on their phone outside of social media, usually. So you'll want to stay to the end to hear what Diane has to say because we get some great suggestions. You'll also want to stay to the end to get access to my latest freebie. Okay, so Diane, we're going to take this step by step. I want you to set the stage for us as it relates to the decision that you've so graciously offered to share with us today. So if you can tell us the background, maybe how old you were, where you were living, take us there.
So we're going to talk today about breast cancer. How did I get there? Well, I was on television. I just ended my 30-year career on TV, stepped back from live TV. And I did TV all over the world. So I took my gene to Canada, Australia, Germany, France, England, and Italy. I was never at home for more than 20 hours at a time. I started to feel a strange feeling in my left breast. And I just kept telling myself, yeah, you're 72 years old, you've got calcium deposits. Oh, I'm too busy. My career's peaking. I can't possibly take time out. Right. Until one day, which just happened to be Christmas Eve of 2017, the pain was really getting bad. And you could see a giant lump. I mean, I waited to the very end. So I went to a friend of mine who was in the medical community for women. He sent me to an imaging establishment, and they basically said to me, "You're hopeless. You've got cancer everywhere." What? I mean, I was such a drama queen. I had to have this happen to me on Christmas Eve. Couldn't happen to me on any other day.
This was during the day before Christmas Eve, right? Or Christmas Eve?
I thought, I went home. I was totally in a state of shock, and I didn't know what to do. Called him back. He was leaving New York Harbor on a cruise, but he said, "I'm going to call the head of surgery for breast cancer at Mount Sinai Hospital, great, in Manhattan." She was just taking off from Marrakesh. Everybody was leaving. But we got me booked in. And the amazing thing was, when I went to Mount Sinai, she took one look at me and said, "You look like a totally healthy female human being to me with a localized disease that's curable. And if it hasn't spread, you are 100% curable. And if it has spread, we can maintain you for many years." Okay, so I took that as my marching papers. And the real truth was, I had used hormone replacement therapy for about 25 years beyond what I should have used it for. So I flooded my own system with hormones. I took responsibility for it. Now I had to go down and do my last shows. Not last shows in the sense of forever, but I had to work out a strategy of saying goodbye for now. I'll be back. I've got another job to do. That job is saving my life, and I'll see you in about a year. But that was difficult enough. But I had a set of people around me, a whole crew and staff around me in the television studio, which was out of Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
And there were 3 or 4 women who were very, very deeply, almost evangelically religious. And they went crazy on me. And they said, you're going to kill yourself. You've got to drink green juice. And I kept thinking, my God, isn't this hard enough? And now I have all these voices in my ear about dissuading me from treatment. So the dramatic point was after my last show, and I'd said goodbye. And believe me, I was really shaken. I mean, I was not even operating within myself. I was somewhere outside of myself. I was in a state of what I would call active shock. You could still operate, still do what you needed to do, but you were in different parts of yourself. So I walked out of the studio and they were all waiting for me. It was raining outside in Florida at 2 a.m. in the morning. And one of them had a head cloth for me, and they wanted me to get down on my hands and knees and pray to God for my cancer to go away. One of them wanted to take me and fly with me to the Philippines. She said she knew a healer who would literally reach into me and pull out all the cancer. I had another woman who had a minister who she said was a healer, and I needed to go to North Carolina into the mountains and pray with him for a week. I had a lot of outside sources saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Your hair is going to all fall out. You're going to die. Chemotherapy kills people. It's evil. It's evil. And I had to make a decision and I tried actually to escape from them and got into my car and started driving. Do you know they got into their cars and drove faster than me and actually blocked me off?
Wow. So what time frame is this? January, or are we still in December, or what kind of time
We were
frame?
in January. We were in January, now at the end of January. And so my husband had died from cancer about 20 years before, but I saw what chemotherapy, yes, in the early stages of chemotherapy, could do to you. And so, I mean, number one, chemotherapy was my absolute worst nightmare coming true. I was going to have to handle cancer alone. People that I had been friends with all were of the opinion that, no, I should not be doing this. I should be doing something else. It was very difficult. I had to really center myself and just say, I love these people, but they can't be in my life anymore. I cannot be diverted from what I know I have to do. And as much as I tried to be logical and explain to them, yes, green juice is great, but you're talking about killing something that's eating you up inside, not making yourself vegan. But it never sunk in, and
so
it was
essentially
so difficult.
You were deciding between, like you said, a more holistic approach that these friends were.
Absolutely. But these friends, I thought their approaches, I knew all about faith healers in the Philippines. I for some reason read up on it and knew someone who had cancer who tried that route, and it was not at all effective. But I was amazed that I had so much interference for getting where I needed to go, which was into treatment with total confidence. They were like, everyone was plucking at my brain. Don't do that, do this. No, don't do that, do that. And I had a road to travel. It was a very narrow road. And I knew that once I started treatment, I was going to feel like a prisoner. You're inside a body. You don't know how you're going to react to all those chemicals. But I knew that my job was saving my life. And when I went back to see the surgeon, who's very famous, Dr. Alyssa Port, she said to me, you know, Diane, women like you do best with cancer like this. And I said, why? And she said, because you've worked pardon me, you've worked your butt off all your life, and now you've got a new job, and this is your job for the next year. And I know you're going to just dive into it. So that was, you know, sometimes you make decisions to go down a road and you can never go back.
Okay.
Once you start chemo and whatever it's done to you, and it's done a number on my body for sure. I mean, there are residual things going on. But once you start down that road, that is a decision that you cannot go back from.
Right.
So while it sounded, I wished I could have just drink celery juice every day, I knew that was totally wrong, but I never expected that so many voices around me were going to be trying to dissuade me from following a successful pattern and supporting me. I had to let those people go out of my life. I couldn't have all that negative interference. That was really difficult.
I'll bet. And how did you know the Western medical route was the way you needed to go? What told you, or what was it?
Well, since the Western medical route was how I got cancer, because in an affluent country like America, you have those choices.
Right.
As a female, I was taking human growth hormone for energy and younger appearance and muscle structure, and then I was taking estrogen. So I flooded my body with hormones that were Western medicine. And now I needed Western medicine to fix it. And my luck was I had a plain talking, hard driving woman in my surgeon who just put it to me the way it was. That was it.
A straight
Right.
shooter.
There was not, oh, she was incredible. And that's my language. So now I knew that my basic caregiver, my number one caregiver, I was going to understand her and her route.
Fabulous.
And so I did it, and it wasn't easy, but I will tell you that I thought, I know it's going to sound crazy, one of the best periods of my life. I learned so much from cancer. I learned life lessons that will carry me through the rest of my life. I learned to be humble. I learned that a disease like cancer doesn't care if you're beautiful or rich or famous or talented. It doesn't care. You're just an opportunity. And I will tell you a story that was so endemic of my treatment and touching to me. So I went to a drop-in clinic for women only within Mount Sinai Hospital called the Dubin Clinic. And it came from Eva Dubin, who was a doctor, had breast cancer, and hated the way females were treated, even by the best hospitals in New York. So she wanted to bring it all under one roof, and it was beyond fabulous. So you're in your own chemotherapy room. You've got fresh white orchids. You've got your own TV. You're private. You've got your own foot massage or shoulder massage, and you have your own catered organic lunch. So every time, so I'm in there and people recognize me in New York. I was at the height of my career. That was 2017, 2018. So suddenly I hear all these nurses running and it's, oh, Sheila, you're here, you're back. Oh my God, it's so good to see you. Oh, come on in, girls. To the nurses, Sheila's here. Everybody runs in to see Sheila. Diane, television personality, left kind of to my own devices. So one of the nurses comes in to see me. I'm thinking, who is this woman, Sheila? She must be famous on TV or famous on Broadway, or a star. So I said, well, what am I, chopped liver? Nobody asked me if I wanted lunch. And the nurse said, but Diane, you never want lunch. I said, yeah, but the least you could do is ask me. Because they said to Sheila, we've got your favorite lunch today, which was a mozzarella and dried tomato sandwich. And they said, we're saving, don't tell anybody, but we're saving 3 of them for you. So I said, nobody even asked me if I want lunch. And she said, okay, Diane, do you want lunch? And I said, well, no, thank you. I don't eat lunch, but I do want to know, who is this woman, Sheila? Is she like a news anchor or a famous dancer? Or I'm going to start crying. They said, no, Diane. She is a homeless mother living in a shelter with her child, and she's got stage 4 breast cancer. And the food is so horrible in the shelter that she does not eat for days at a time. So when she comes here, we try to give her this one sandwich and one little tangerine. That's her meal for the entire day. And she'll save these sandwiches and eat them day after day. And that's,
wow.
Well, okay. So that pretty much taught me everything I ever needed to know. It taught me a whole new level of the order of things in life. It taught me how important empathy and kindness were. And it gave me the motivation for writing my second book, which started Christmas Day of 2017, because I thought, if I'm not going to survive this, then this book is going to be my legacy. But that's why I say cancer taught me so much. Oh, it set me up for the rest of my life to be so much more charitable, so grateful for the life and the position I lead, and how to give back to others who are so much less fortunate.
Wow. And
yep,
meeting people like Sheila, right?
Yeah. Was essential for my spiritual growth. So frankly, so was breast cancer. That was, if you're on television, if you're in front of a camera, if you're number one for years, and you are fortunate enough to be in a situation where you can support yourself by doing what you love, and you have very vocal, very loyal fans, so you have a whole sisterhood of women around you, because I designed a middle-aged jean for middle-aged women.
Right.
No one else in the industry had it. It was an amazing adventure of just going around the world with the concept, because let's face it, no matter where you go, Paris, London, Seoul, Korea, you've got one thing in common: hormones. and the lack of, and the exit of, and what it does to your body. So I incorporated all of that when I went back on air for another 4 years. I incorporated all of that sympathy and knowledge into my clothing. I don't know. It was you live in New York, and you're doing a fashion business. It's like living in an ivory tower, right? You don't ever have to really see anything unpleasant, experience anything unpleasant, until you just happen to get a little disease like stage 3 cancer.
Wow.
And then you've got to go from being invulnerable to being 100% vulnerable. It was an amazing set of life lessons to learn.
Wow. Phenomenal. So how long did your treatment last?
Felt like forever. Well, the story was I went into chemotherapy, said goodbye to my audience, came back, went into chemotherapy the next day, the strongest chemotherapy for the longest possible time. 6 months of chemo. Yeah. And not easy to take when you live by yourself, right? But I had incredible support, amazing friends, never went to a chemo session alone.
Wow.
Always, I actually had, my friends were stacked up and fighting over who was going to take me for what. And
Wow.
so, and then I went into radiology, pardon me, and had all my lymph nodes taken out of my left side. And so all of that radiology really burnt my skin, but as long as I was wearing the right clothing, you couldn't see it. So my last treatment, which was November, I started at the end of January, November. I packed a bag. I got up off that cold hard table, went into the little teensy locker room, got dressed, took my bag, got in the car, went to LaGuardia, and went to the TV network and did a huge set of shows with almost no hair, maybe a quarter of an inch of hair, if that. No eyebrows, no eyelashes. I mean, I had, my hair was my identity all my life. It was long, it was dyed red, it was huge. And so the one thing I always counted on hiding behind, I didn't even have that anymore. And that was a humbling experience as well, because my audience, it really was a community of women. It really was a sisterhood. And I went on air, and in a day and a half, I got 132,000 I love yous.
Oh my goodness.
On Facebook. Yeah. Yeah. And I felt like, okay, I built my family. That's my family. Those are my people. And so they really helped me out, because your odds of surviving any kind of cancer, like what I had, where it's really intense, your odds are not good if you do not have a really huge family structure around you. But if you don't have blood, then you've got to go for whatever family you've created. And so it I don't know, it taught me so much about myself that it is literally impossible for me to talk about or have a negative feeling within myself for that year and a half, 2 years I went through.
Wow. It sounds like you'd amassed a tribe who really saw your beauty inside as opposed to what you looked like on the outside.
Well, I would say that I was a very different designer. Most designers in New York, I would say most fashion designers in general, design what pleases them and then wants the customer to agree with them and come to them. I was totally different. When I hit about 58 and a half years old, and I went through the whole hormonal change. I gained a ton of weight, and I gained most of it as a spare tire around the middle. When I was young, in my 60s, in the 60s and 70s, I designed denim for rock and roll stars like Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Sly and the Family Stone, Rod Stewart, da-da-da-da. I was a cool girl. I was a girl who was always in jeans. When I couldn't wear jeans anymore, I went berserk trying to find one. Nobody wanted to make jeans for my middle-aged pudgy body, so I made one for myself. I loved it. It changed my life. Then I brought it out as a commercial product, and it changed millions of women's lives. And I took their needs and put it into the garment, tried rather than forcing them to buy something they not only didn't really need, but probably once they got it home, didn't really want. And that formed a trust between the customer and myself that was very familial.
Right.
So I was a totally different kind of niche business and on-air personality and seller than they have ordinarily seen.
Wow. Well, it wound up serving you very well.
Yeah,
in the long
it
run.
did.
Wow.
It did.
Diane, that's a fascinating story. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that health issue.
No. Listen to me. One thing I never ever wanted was anybody to be sorry for me. You know what? I'm almost 78. I'll be 78 in a couple of weeks. I'd never been in a hospital before.
Wow.
When my surgeon said, "You look like an incredibly healthy female," she was right.
She was right.
I had never, at the age of 72, when I was diagnosed, I had never been in a hospital.
Wow.
Ever. And so many conditions as we get older that I saw people getting around me, conditions that were not fixable, conditions that only grew worse with no solution. This was a disease with an ultimate solution, surgery, but we had to shrink the tumors. And oh, by the way, I also had it. The bad one was in my left breast, but I also had my right breast, and they were two totally different kinds of cancer. So it wasn't simple. It wasn't easy. And for somebody like me, who is a control freak, like I want to do everything and get it all into place, and I had to give myself up to the universe and just say, I really love life. Nobody could be more grateful than me for my life. Save me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a heartwarming and phenomenal story.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Diane, before we go, as always, I ask my guests what their most favorite app is on their phone. And I usually say outside of social media, but sometimes I relax that a little bit. Did you have a favorite app on your phone?
Yes, I do. And
nobody
will even believe me. I love watching baby kitten and baby elephant videos on TikTok. And late at night, like 3 a.m., with those nights where you wake up and you just can't go back to sleep, I'm watching little baby elephants running around in the forest. I'm watching baby kittens with a bottle in their mouth, drinking like an infant. And I love it. Wow. I love it. And for me, at 77 years old, my first thing with TikTok was, oh, I'm not doing TikTok. That's only for teenagers. No, and I also love vintage Elvis.
Elvis?
Videos, music videos. Yeah, Elvis Presley.
I'll have to go look because I certainly haven't explored those topics on TikTok.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
awesome.
That's just me. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Diane, again, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your stories today.
My pleasure.
To all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And if you're ready to realize your wildest dreams, come and join us in the Wildly Courageous Women Facebook group. where we're changing people's lives one brave decision at a time.
Okay.
I'm Dana Peever. Until next time, make great decisions and do life fun. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wildly Courageous Women. Keep listening to hear more stories of these incredible women realizing their wildest dreams. If you have a story to tell about a decision that you've made that has impacted your life, I'd love to feature you as a guest. Please get in touch and don't forget to grab my latest gift by clicking below. I'm Dana Peever. As always, make great decisions and do life fun.